Another way that Sonic Heroes is similar to the classic Sonic games is that while it doesn't have the return of multiple different gameplay styles, it does have multiple playthroughs of the game you can do as different characters. And similar to Sonic 3 or Knuckles or even Sonic Adventure, the playthroughs are slightly different from each other. However, the execution of the multiple character playthroughs in this game is a bit flawed in how it was done. Which is unfortunate, because I think on paper here we have a great template for how to do multiple playthroughs as different characters in a Sonic game. You have this core Sonic gameplay that you want out of a Sonic game, and then you do the things that have been done in the previous Sonic games. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, you had different abilities for all the different characters that allowed them to access different areas of the levels and play the game slightly differently. And then on top of that, this game also does the Sonic Adventure type thing, where they modify the level design for each of the teams, giving them a slightly different experience. But unfortunately, it just doesn't really work out the way you would want it to. Starting with Team Rose, for example, another thing that they did similar to the classic games with this multiple playthrough design is they relegated a couple of the teams to different difficulty levels. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, it was basically Sonic was normal, Tails was easy, Knuckles was hard. And they've done the same thing here in Sonic Heroes. Team Rose is the easy mode playthrough of the game. And because the game doesn't have different play styles like the adventure games did, the levels are not nearly as modified as they were in Sonic Adventure. You do still play through the level in a very similar manner no matter what team you're playing as. It's just that the obstacles, the enemies, the platforming sequences are just slightly rearranged, but you still approach them in generally the same way, and it's mainly just a difficulty difference that separates how the teams play from each other. In Team Rose's example, all of the levels are shorter than they were when playing as Team Sonic, they're easier, they're simpler, and personally, I don't really find Team Rose that fun to play because of how simplistic and easy the game becomes. Maybe for a beginner player, this is a worthwhile, first playthrough to get a grips with the game's mechanics, especially considering how twitchy and glitchy it can be. But once you get experience with this game, the Team Rose playthrough really doesn't offer very much for you, which is in contrast to Tails in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, because his flight enabled advanced players to still play him in a cool and interesting and fun way, which is the other major issue with how they did the team stuff in this game, because the different teams don't really play differently from each other very much at all. They all have the same moves and abilities, and some of them have very minor differences from each other, but they really don't add up to very much. For example, with Team Rose, Amy is slower than the other speed characters, but she also has this hammer, twirl, hover thing she can do, making her platforming a bit easier. Again, Team Rose is the easy mode. But that's really it in terms of substantial differences for Amy. Cream is exactly identical to Tails, there is no differences at all. And Big is a bit different from Knuckles in terms of how he works as a power character, because instead of doing punches, he doesn't really have melee attacks on the ground, he instead will pick up Amy and Cream to use them as projectiles, sort of like the fire dunk but a grounded version of it. And he also has this move when you're in the air where he can do this belly flop thing, which those are some differences, but they really don't amount to that much. They kind of just make the power characters in this style just kind of worse than the more melee-oriented power characters. The one cool thing you can do that I don't really understand why this works is if you do the belly flop move and then switch to your speed character, by the time you hit the ground, for whatever reason, you will just launch off with a ton of speed. I have no idea why this happens, but it's very cool and I like it. So yeah, that's Team Rose. Not really much to say about it. It's kind of just easy mode, and it's not really that interesting or fun to me. So let's just move on to the next team. Next we'll talk about Team Chaotix, the kind of oddball mode of the game, the mission mode. While this game doesn't have different play styles, again, Team Chaotix does play like all the other teams in all the same levels with the same core gameplay, their objectives when playing their levels is not simply to complete the level like it is with every other team. Every level, they're going to have a different objective that they have to complete. Normally, that's collecting a certain number of things, killing a certain number of enemies. Sometimes it will have levels where you just have to get to the end, or you might even have to get through a level without being detected by any enemies. Things like that. It's very all over the place with Team Chaotix. You're doing a lot of different things. And it's neat in its own way, and I certainly enjoy the Team Chaotix playthrough more than Team Rose, as it is more interesting and engaging in its design, and it is also more challenging. But it's still not, like, amazing to me. Like, the objectives themselves, I'm not really bothered by, because most of the time they're pretty simple and ultimately just kind of amount to going through the level linearly like every other team, and just keeping your eyes peeled for a thing you gotta grab or destroy or whatever. It doesn't really affect how you actually play through the levels that much. You can still pretty much just play this like a linear, straightforward platformer. You just gotta make sure that you pick up a couple of things along the way. And something nice that they actually do is in the levels where you have missions to collect a certain number of things, most of the time there will be more things in the level than you actually need, so you don't run into that problem of missing that one thing you need and having to scour the level over and over and over searching for it. There's usually at least double the things you need, so it's not that much of an issue. Most of the time. Some of the levels, it does have the exact number you need and you can't afford to miss any, and if you do miss any, then you do have to go back to the beginning of the level and play through it again and try to find it, and of course if you miss it again, you have to play through it again. Fortunately, most of the time with Team Chaotix, they hide stuff in very obvious and in-your-face things, where as long as you're diligent and you pay attention, you're not gonna miss stuff most of the time. But it certainly can be a problem if you do miss things, and so I don't blame anyone for finding Team Chaotix a very frustrating playthrough. Personally, I still don't really get very much out of them. They're still kind of just to me. Though Espio, the speed character of Team Chaotix, does have one unique ability that kind of sets him apart from the other characters, in that he can turn invisible. That's cool, but they don't really make that much use out of it. And Vector is also a similar power character type to Big, where he has the ranged attacks on the ground and the bounce move. So, Team Chaotix, it's okay, but I certainly don't love it, and I don't blame anyone for having issues with this playthrough. And that just leaves us with Team Dark, which is the hard mode playthrough of the game, and Team Dark plays completely identically to Team Sonic. I guess you could argue that's appropriate for Shadow, but it certainly doesn't make for a very interesting second playthrough in terms of moveset, because nothing is different here. However, with Team Dark being hard mode, they have the most difficult levels in terms of how they're designed and laid out. They have the most difficult platforming sequences, the most hazards, the longest levels they visit, the largest amount of the level. Like, even Team Sonic doesn't explore the entirety of these levels. Only Team Dark goes through absolutely every part of the level. There are parts of the levels that even Team Sonic does not play. And personally, for me, I actually kind of see Team Dark as, like, the real game of Sonic Heroes, because their level designs are far more fleshed out than any of the other teams, and really take far more use of the game and all of its mechanics than any other of the teams do, even Team Sonic. They have much more interesting and fun level design than any of the other teams, and their combat encounters, by virtue of being more challenging, they deal with larger groups of enemies and more difficult enemy patterns more frequently, making the combat for them more interesting. I actually have to admit that all the stuff I was talking about in part 1 of this series that I really liked, I wasn't actually talking about the Team Sonic playthrough, I was actually talking about Team Dark's playthrough of the game. Team Sonic is fun and I enjoy playing them as well, but they are still a little bit simplistic for my taste. Team Dark really feels like the full level design, using these levels the way they were actually intended to be used, and everything else feels like a watered-down version of that. Like, actually, if you were to ask me what the difficulty settings of this game are, I would say that, like, Team Sonic is easy mode, Team Dark is normal mode, and Team Rose is, like, poo baby mode, because I really do not enjoy their playthrough at all. But Team Dark, it really feels like this is what this game actually is. This is the playthrough where you use the mechanics the most, and where it feels most like a Sonic game. Take this section of Power Plant right here. Playing through this as Team Sonic, it's just an auto-scroller. You just take this elevator ride up, and it's slow and boring, and all you do is occasionally kill enemies to keep the elevator going. Lame and boring. Why the fuck is an auto-scroller in a Sonic game? But in the Team Dark playthrough, when you get to this elevator ride, it is still an auto-scroller that slowly goes up, and you have to kill enemies along the way to keep the elevator rising. But there are now these hoops that you can go through that launch you up really high, and you can actually skip the elevator ride entirely if you can manage to go through all of these hoops correctly, just like a Sonic game. This is why I call Team Dark the real playthrough of the game. This does not exist in Team Sonic's playthrough, and this is something that, to me, makes the level design objectively better and more fitting of Sonic. And there are many examples of this kind of thing in the Team Dark playthrough, where they take the existing level design, and particularly the Team Sonic variants of these levels, and they just flesh them out and make them more interesting and more fun to play. I actually want to address something I talked about in part 1 that I think I maybe didn't clarify in the best way possible, which was the depth of Sonic Heroes and the decision-making stuff I was talking about. I was really making it seem like that is the game of Sonic Heroes, and that's the reason that people don't like it, is because they don't really understand these things. And I do stand by the fact that I think most players, a lot of the depth of this game does go over their heads. But you don't need to engage with the depth of Sonic Heroes to play it. The game is constantly telling you what to do through signs and the characters' dialogue with each other, telling you we should leave this to Omega, or Rouge should handle this, and stuff like that. So the game can be very simplistic if you look at it that way. If your goal is to simply just play through the game, it is a very simple and straightforward game where it's constantly telling you and reminding you what you need to be doing. However, as I've said in many of my Sonic videos, personally the thing I like most about Sonic games is the time attack element, trying to complete the levels as quickly and efficiently as possible, and that is where the depth of Sonic Heroes really starts to shine, because in trying to figure out how to complete the levels as quickly as possible, you start to experiment with the game's mechanics and start to question the game's recommendations. When it tells you that you should handle this thing with one character, you can reevaluate the situation and go, actually, I think I could do this faster with a different character. Like Sonic Heroes on its own, by default, when you're just trying to complete the game, it's not really that complex, it's not really that difficult. But in my natural desire to try to optimize a game and try to play it as well and smartly and efficiently as I possibly can, I see so many opportunities for little micro improvements you can make just by changing what formation you use, changing the moves you use, as I said, decision making, thinking about the current situation and how to approach it. It's not about how do I get through this level, it's about what is the best way to get through this level. If you're not someone that cares about playing games well and tries to get better at games and optimize and improve, a lot of this stuff doesn't mean anything to you, and that's what I was talking about when I said that a lot of people don't really get into this stuff of Sonic Heroes, and that's why I think they don't like it. Because to me, that's the stuff that makes Sonic Heroes really fun. If you don't get into that stuff, then it is a very simplistic game that is incredibly janky, incredibly glitchy, very broken, has many level design problems, the levels are overly long and tedious, there are a lot of issues here, and the only thing that makes it worthwhile for me is the depth that comes from trying to play the game at a higher level. And Team Dark is really the playthrough that really makes that type of gameplay shine, which is why they are by far my favorite team to play in the game. And additionally, Team Dark has another element about their levels that I absolutely love. You have a sequence like here, classic for the adventure games, where you're going through loops, and of course it's all scripted, you just hold forward and the game does everything for you. Whatever, not interesting. Oh my god, what was that? Did you see that? There was a rainbow ring there that I missed because I was just mindlessly holding forward. And if you hit that rainbow ring, you know what it does? It sends you up onto a higher path where you will get through this sequence faster. Oh my god, it's Sonic level design, like the original 2D Sonic games had, that sometimes would require memorization or punishing the player for passively letting the level play itself for you. there was actually a passive trap here that worked just like how it does in the original 2D Sonic games. You go through a speed section with a bunch of loops, and the game makes you think that all you should be doing right now is holding forward mindlessly, and it punishes you for that. And this is not just a one-time occurrence in this game. There are multiple passive traps at the end of speed sequences. And it's like, oh my god, they actually managed to get this to work in a 3D Sonic game. I love it. I absolutely love having this type of gameplay back in a Sonic game, and I was totally able to, just like in the 2D games, feel out the level design and tell when it was trying to trick me into passivity, and so at the end of a speed sequence, I would just jump, and a lot of times, I would be correct and end up on a faster path or a shortcut or something like that. And it was so cool and satisfying, and it felt just like the Genesis Sonic games. I fucking love it. Team Sonic does have this kind of stuff in its level design to a degree, but Team Dark has it substantially more. Again, just another reason why I really view Team Dark as the real playthrough of Sonic Heroes. So as far as the 4 teams go, you have basically a dead even split here, in my opinion. Team Rose and Team Chaotix, not really that fun, not really that interesting to me. They're not, like, miserable, they're not horrible. You know, if you can cope with the game's jankiness and shittiness and the bottomless pits everywhere and all that kind of stuff. They're just kind of very boring playthroughs. Meanwhile, the Team Sonic playthrough, I think, is fun, and the Team Dark playthrough, I think, is really fun. That's the shit that really makes Sonic Heroes worth playing, in my opinion. And I guess now would be a good time to also talk about boss fights, because like the classic games, there is a boss fight at the end of every single zone. And they are all terrible. There are 3 types of boss fights in Sonic Heroes. You have fights against Eggman in some kind of machine of his, and these fights basically boil down to just wailing on him until he runs out of health, so those suck. You have fights against the other teams, which, as has always been the case in these Sonic games, fighting other playable characters is fucking awful, and in this case, these are just a total fucking crapshoot. I don't know how the fuck you're supposed to fight these, but it's just all up in the air. You can have these fights where you just cannot fucking knock these fuckers off the stage at all, and it takes forever, and it's fucking annoying. And then other times you do one tornado as your speed character, and you kill the enemy team in less than 10 seconds. And I really don't know how the fuck you're supposed to do this consistently. And the third type of boss fight, paradoxically, is both the lamest and also the most enjoyable boss fights in the game, in my opinion. Which is, there are 2 bosses that are just straight up enemy gauntlets. You just fight a whole bunch of enemies. Which, as I said, it's very lame. It's very lazy. Like, we didn't actually make a boss here, just fight a bunch of enemies and that'll be the boss fight. But these are actually my favorite bosses in the game because I enjoy the game's core combat, especially the Team Dark variants of these fights, where they have really difficult enemy patterns that you have to deal with, that I end up finding these lazy, cheap, easy ways of making boss fights really cool. I like the enemy gauntlets. They're pretty fun. And while Sonic Heroes is not a Sonic adventure game, one thing that it does continue the tradition of in those games is that once you complete the game with all the teams, you unlock the last story that you can play. Except not really, because this being a very classic 2D style of Sonic game, you know what that means. Fucking special stages to get the Chaos Emeralds, but surely by now, after so many games so much later in development, surely Sonic Team has figured out how to make really good special stages that are actually enjoyable and that you actually want to do. And if you thought that, you would be dead fucking wrong, because these are the worst fucking special stages in the entire Sonic series, in my opinion. The way you access the special stages in this game is that throughout the levels you'll find a key that you can collect out of these cages, and if you can grab the key and make it to the end of the level, then you will access a special stage. Getting hit while holding a key will cause you to lose it, so you have to complete the level without taking a hit from when you collected the key. This actually is really the only benefit to playing Team Rose, because with their levels being very short and easy, it makes it very easy to collect the Chaos Emeralds with them. And also, to collect the Chaos Emeralds, you specifically have to collect the keys on Act 2 of all of the zones. On Act 1, it's just a special stage to play for getting extra lives. Act 2 is where you get the Chaos Emeralds, and you can only get 1 Chaos Emerald per zone. Anyway, as for the special stages themselves, they're kind of similar in design to the Sonic 2 half-pipe thing, but they're now a full pipe, and you can walk around the entire thing. And the Chaos Emerald is rushing forward, and you have to catch up to it and grab it. And the way you do that is by collecting these orbs that are laid out throughout these stages, and collecting these orbs will fill up the meter in the top right corner, which you can then use to do a boost, dramatically increasing your speed and letting you catch up to the Chaos Emerald. On paper, there's really nothing wrong with the design of these special stages. They seem perfectly in line with what the classic games were doing. The problem here is that, holy fuck, these special stages do not fucking work. They are the most broken, janky, glitchy part of the entire fucking game. Just look at how much my characters are twitching and derping around. You literally cannot walk in a straight line properly in these games, and the controls are completely fucked. Good luck weaving precisely through all of these bombs with this fucking control scheme. It is absolutely impossible. It is terrible to play these special stages. They are fucking abysmal. Now, I have been told by some commenters that the PC version of Sonic Heroes actually fixed these special stages, and they actually play properly, and you can control them correctly, and perhaps that makes them a lot better. But I've not personally played those versions of the special stages, and most people haven't, because most people have not played the PC version of Sonic Heroes. So for the most part, this is what the special stages of Sonic Heroes are, and they are absolutely fucking terrible. If there was any reason to play the PC version of Sonic Heroes, the special stages actually functioning is probably the biggest. Though I'm very doubtful of these special stages still being that particularly fun if they were actually working correctly, because, I mean, historically, the special stages, at best, are okay-ish minigames that are not really that worthwhile. And I imagine that would probably be the same with these, because if you can play them well, these can be over in like less than 30 seconds. They are extremely slight. So anyway, once you've completed all 4 of the campaigns and collected the Chaos Emeralds, you get access to the last story, which is just 2 boss fights that both suck, and I really don't have much more to say about it than that. One thing that's kind of cool, I guess, is that for the Supersonic final boss, it's not actually a minigame this time. It is using the game's normal gameplay, and you're playing as, like, Team Supersonic, and they have a different moveset than the normal Team Sonic. So you're playing the normal standard gameplay, rather than some sort of weird minigame, which I do prefer. But the boss fight itself is still really boring, so it doesn't even really matter that much. One criticism that I hear very commonly for Sonic Heroes is how the game makes you play through all 4 of the campaigns to unlock this last story and properly complete it, because it does mean you have to play through the game 4 times, and it can very easily feel like padding to people that you're just playing the same game multiple times. And as I said, all the teams play very similarly to each other, and the level designs, while modified, don't really end up feeling that hugely different from each other, because they are mainly just different difficulties of the same levels. This results in Sonic Heroes being by far the most repetitive Sonic game up to this point. And on top of that, there's also an issue with the way that the levels are constructed, because similar to Sonic Adventure 2, these levels are made from pieces, where they were just copy and pasted all over the place and snapped together, then filled with enemies, obstacles, and hazards in order to create levels. And I do think that is a smart and efficient way to create level design. The thing is, they really go overboard with Sonic Heroes in terms of how much they reuse pieces. They will reuse very large chunks of the level wholesale with very minimal modification multiple times within the same level. These 2 parts of Team Sonic's power plant are the same level, and they just reuse this entire section. Now combine that with the fact that you play through this level 4 times with each of the teams, and you go through this same platforming sequence so many frickin' times as you play through the game, and it's like, reusing assets to this degree stops feeling economical and starts to feel lazy, and it definitely makes the game feel very repetitive and tiring. Personally, I don't take that much issue with this, because the minor differences in how they reuse pieces does still result in playing these sequences differently when you're trying to optimize,
but for a vanilla playthrough, there's no denying that this is way overkill in terms of reusing stuff. And also, the way that they've laid out all these teams and how they're different difficulties and stuff, it really doesn't make any sense, considering that the game does encourage you to play all 4 teams. Because Team Rose is the easy mode, but who in the fuck gets a brand new Sonic game and does not start with playing as Sonic? Everybody is going to do that. I'm willing to bet that like 99% of players, when they first got this game, they loaded it up with Team Sonic. And then after you beat Team Sonic and you go on to another team, most likely people are probably going to go on to Team Dark next, because everybody likes Shadow, and they are the second team listed on the team select. So, by the time that you get to easy mode, you've probably already played normal and hard mode, which is just like, what the fuck? Why did they lay out the difficulties like this? And for that matter, the entire idea of making these different difficulties doesn't really gel when you do encourage the player to do all 4 playthroughs. In that instance, it would make much more sense to make these different playthroughs rather than different difficulties. In Sonic 3 and Knuckles, yes, the characters did sort of function like different difficulties, but more than anything, they played differently from each other. Their abilities and the unique parts of levels that they went to made for a more varied experience rather than a differently challenging one. And this game just does not do that, so that is definitely a major issue in terms of making the game feel even more repetitive on top of all of the other problems. However, there is one thing about that criticism that I find very bizarre, which is that the game makes you play it 4 times. The game doesn't make you do anything. I don't know what people are talking about that the game makes you play it 4 times. It absolutely does not. You can play through this game once as one team and then call it quits and say you played through Sonic Heroes. You don't absolutely have to play through all 4 teams to fully play Sonic Heroes. I don't think anybody would say that for Sonic 3 and Knuckles, you need to play it with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, and Sonic and Tails together in order to fully play Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Of course not. It's the same game, just played with different characters, and the playthrough is slightly different. It's just a different variant of the same game. But, you say, you have to play all 4 teams to unlock the last story, so you don't really complete the game unless you play all 4 teams. And I'll say the same thing I said for my Sonic Adventure video. Who fucking cares about completing the game? All you're missing out on is 2 crappy boss fights by not doing the last story. You could, just not do it, and that would be perfectly fine. You don't have to play the entire game just because it's there. If you want to only play the fun part of the game and not play the parts of it that aren't good, just do that. Some people might try to argue that if you only play 1 or 2 playthroughs of the game, well then that's not very satisfying because it's only like a 2-hour game in that instance. But I mean, I don't really see why that's much of an issue. Every single other Sonic game up to this point has been like 2 or 3 hours or less. I mean, the original Sonic games are like under an hour for 1 and 2. Why is it a problem for games to be short? I can't fucking stand you goddamn people that are like, my game needs to be super long. I don't give a shit how long a game is. A game could be 40 minutes long or 100 hours long. I don't care. As long as the game is good and fun, length is irrelevant to me. And it's the very people that demand length in their games that is the reason this game is so padded out. It's kind of one of the inherent issues with Sonic games, is that because you go so fast in these games, you fly past level design much more quickly than you do in other types of games, meaning the assets that the developers need to create don't last as long as they do in other games. So making games that have a decent amount of length to them are a challenge with Sonic, which is why replayability has always been a big focus with this series, and that is where the padding of Sonic Heroes really comes from. Well, we can make the game longer if we take our existing levels and we just modify them a bit. That won't take nearly as much development work, but will crank out many more hours of playthrough. So yeah, Sonic Heroes is unfortunately a padded out game with a lot of filler and a lot of stretching its content to make it last as long as possible. But I don't blame that on Sonic Team. I blame that on the gaming audiences demanding that their games be as long as possible, because that demand causes developers to have to compromise their games and make them worse than they would be otherwise. In my opinion, you can absolutely play through Sonic Heroes, pick one of the teams, play through the game, and have a perfectly good and satisfying time without having to be forced to play the game 4 times. That said, I am here to review the entirety of these Sonic games, so now I will talk about 100%. And 100% in Sonic Heroes is kind of similar to Sonic Adventure 2. You have to get all the A ranks in the game, and you have to complete all of the extra missions available on every level. But the way it's been divvied up is a bit different than it was in Sonic Adventure 2. This time around, every team only has 1 mission per level, but because all 4 teams play through every single level, it essentially kind of means that every level has 4 missions on it. Plus, you also have to get A ranks on all the normal levels with all the normal teams, meaning playing through the game to get all the A ranks means playing every single level minimum 8 times, which, like I said in my Sonic Adventure 2 video, is a fucking slog. And that is especially the case in Sonic Heroes because of how much longer these levels are. And they have retained the scoring system design of Sonic Adventure 2, where you get a lot of your score from killing enemies and shit like that, doing things to stop, slow down, and get points. Meaning you can't just complete the levels as quickly as possible, you need to take even longer on these ridiculously long levels in order to get the score you need. And of course you can't afford to die a single time because that will reset your score back to 0, so you need to play through these like 15-minute long levels without dying a single time, and it's quite fucking miserable, I must say. And for the missions, it's kind of the same sort of stuff that was in Sonic Adventure 2. Every team has a different mission type that they need to do. Team Sonic needs to complete the level in under a time minute, Team Dark needs to kill a certain number of enemies on every level, blah blah blah. Though Team Chaotix is the one where things start to get pretty problematic in their mission-based design, because all of their secondary missions are kind of advanced versions of their normal missions. For example, remember how I said that a lot of their levels, when you have to collect a certain number of things, they have extras? That way you don't need to collect every single one, kind of alleviating that issue of having to find everything and play the level multiple times? Well, on the second mission, you do need to collect everything, and this can become quite a fucking problem. And a lot of their missions in general just get more tedious and more annoying, so the secondary missions as Team Chaotix kind of suck. Though, in my opinion, it's not as bad as the Team Dark missions, because having to kill 100 enemies in every level, the issue with that is that not every level even has 100 enemies in it, so you know what you have to do to complete the level? You get sent back to the beginning, and you have to play through it again, killing all the enemies again. And some of the levels have so few enemies that I had to do 3 run-throughs of the level in one go to kill all 100. Jesus fucking Christ, talk about padding out the game and making you play it over and over. Thankfully, at least, Sonic Heroes doesn't have any chow shit to worry about. It's just getting all the A ranks, which is a miserable experience that I would not recommend doing. And your reward for playing through the game a billion fucking times and taking forever to do it all is you unlock another playthrough of the game. Like, what the fuck is this? This is like a giant slap in the face. Hey, you just played through the game like minimum 8 fucking times. Why don't you do it again? You're really up for playing through all of these levels again, aren't you? I mean, this game wasn't padded out enough to begin with, right? So how about another playthrough? Because what you unlock is Super Hard Mode, which, while it's kind of like a fucking slap in the face in terms of just the fact that you get another playthrough of the game to do after you've already played it to the point that you're sick of it, the actual playthrough itself of Super Hard Mode I really enjoy, because once again, it modifies the level design kind of like a 5th team, essentially, and it just goes that one step over Team Dark, making the levels even harder, even tougher platforming sequences, even more difficult enemy encounters, And they really get very experimental with the level design here, because this is kind of like a secret 100% unlockable. They really get, like, odd with the way that they choose to lay out these levels and really demand a lot from the player, and it's very fun and very cool. I like when these Sonic games start to get hard, because they get very experimental and kind of dumb in their level design, and I find that very fun. That said, would I recommend 100%ing Sonic Heroes to unlock Super Hard Mode? Jesus fucking Christ, no. I was about to just give up on this whole 100%ing all these games, because fucking Christ. After playing through Sonic Adventure 2 5 billion times to do all those missions, I absolutely did not want to do it again in Sonic Heroes. I was so close to giving up, but I persevered through it and I did it, and now I am never going to fucking do that again in my entire life. If you want my recommendation to get the most enjoyment out of Sonic Heroes possible, then my recommendation is to play through Team Sonic, play through Team Dark, download a save file online, and play Super Hard Mode. That's it. 3 simple playthroughs that escalate in difficulty, pushing the game and its mechanics further and further and asking more of you as the player. I think that works very well. It's less repetitive, but you still get a decent amount of meat playing through the game 3 times. It's very enjoyable that way, as opposed to playing the game normally, doing Team Rose and Team Chaotix, which aren't really that good. Especially better than trying to 100% it. It's better than doing the fucking special stages. As I've said with a lot of my Sonic videos up to this point, I don't enjoy all of the aspects of these games. Like in the classic games, I don't like doing the special stages. I don't like the boss fights in any of these games. I don't like Big and all that crap in Sonic Adventure 1. That is kind of a recurring thing with lots of the Sonic games. Why do these games have such bad reputations with general gamers, but a lot of Sonic fans can really enjoy them? Because there are a lot of things that are good about these games, but there are also a lot of problems that they have that are very bad, and it's just such a frustrating thing about this series. There are so few games in Sonic that I can say are just universally all around all good games that I can just recommend as good games. Like, if I recommend Sonic Heroes to someone, I have to give them the caveats. If I recommend Adventure to someone, I have to give them the caveats. In so many games going forward, there are so many asterisks that I need to put in when I recommend them to people, and it's just like, ugh, can't we just get a Sonic game that doesn't have any major problems and is just a good video game all around? Sadly, we did not get that with Sonic Heroes, but like many Sonic games, there is definitely parts of this game that I think are extremely good and I very much enjoy, and I can definitely recommend those parts of the game. So Sonic Heroes, I really enjoy it. I love this game. I think it's super fun. But that doesn't mean overall I think that it is a good game. Sonic may have always been good, but not everything about Sonic was always good.